So we're going to talk about how to create brand new habits this year and beyond. Now, I don't know about you, but I've read lots of books and articles on creating new habits. Some range from extremely boring to quite interesting. But the biggest problem that I always came across when it came to creating new habits was putting all this science and research actually into practice. So what I'm going to try and help you do in today's video is to help you bridge the gap from having an understanding about how habits are formed and how to actually apply them and create brand new habits that are really going to change your life. Because ultimately, all you need is a handful of new habits to completely transform your life. In fact, if you just added in one brand new habit today and you applied it for the next 30 days, you could completely transform the trajectory for the rest of the year. So let's dive into my best tips and insights for creating brand new habits. So the first thing is know where you are right now and where it is that you want to go. So one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make when it comes to creating new habits and behaviors is that they're trying to copy and emulate the habits and behaviors of other successful people, or they took it from something they read in an article on a YouTube video like this one, for example. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that per se. I'm all for stealing and emulating good habits and behaviors, right? But I think it's important to create habits that are going to help you in your life and help you to get to where you want to go. Because it's all well and good copying Richard Branson's morning routine or Elon Musk's morning routine, but your vision for what you want from your life and what Elon Musk wants for his life are two totally different things. And therefore, the habits that Elon has and the habits that you're going to have may also be two different things, right? So the emotional connection that you have to creating these new habits and behaviors are what's going to get you over the finish line and really help you when you don't feel like waking up in the morning, when you don't feel like going to the gym, when you don't feel like doing all these things. Because I guarantee you, if you're a human being and you're not a lizard, then there's going to be days where you don't feel like doing these habits. And so having that emotional anchor and that emotional connection, because you've chosen that habit for a specific purpose and it's part of your new identity that you're forming, and it's going to carry you and take you to where you want to go, is so, so important. So for example, people love the idea of learning a new language. Like I speak several languages, and so I understand what it takes to learn a new language. For example, you have to commit to a habit of doing grammar work every day, understanding vocabulary, practicing speaking, maybe even speaking to a teacher and doing all these kinds of things. But the problem is that people adopt these habits because they think they're good. Oh, I'd like to learn a language, so I'm just going to do Duolingo. And so they do Duolingo for 10 or 15 minutes a day. And don't get me wrong, Duolingo is good, but what it does is, so for example, let's take learning a language. I speak several languages, and it's only because, one, I really enjoy languages, so it's a very clear part of my identity and what I want from my life. And secondly is because I've created study habits around learning new languages. So, for example, I identified that you have to learn new grammar skills, you have to learn vocabulary, you have to learn how to write, read, listen, and speak in those languages. And they're all kind of separate disciplines. It sounds overwhelming, but if you adopt and select the right habits over time, it's going to create that compound effect. Now, what a lot of people do is that they kind of like the idea of learning a language, and because other people tell them it's a good idea or they think it's a good idea, they don't really go all in on it. And so they tell this lie to themselves that they're adopting this great new habit, which is going on a language app like Duolingo, which is great, by the way. But if you do 10 or 15 minutes of Duolingo a day and use it as a dopamine hit to get a streak, a 30-day streak, we've all been there. Okay, you can learn some new vocabulary, but you're not actually moving the needle in a meaningful way to learn a language. Now, you might be one of those people who only wants to learn vocabulary, and that's the only time that you can put aside per day to learn language. Great. Then the reality is that maybe learning a language is not that important to you, and it's not part of your long-term play, long-term vision. So what I'm getting at here is that I'm not saying that you shouldn't do things for 10 or 15 minutes a day, but I really believe in acquiring skills and habits that are really going to move the needle for you in life and going to do something meaningful for you, because I believe that our purpose here on earth is to live meaningful, enjoyable lives. And therefore, if we want to create a meaningful, enjoyable life, we need to have the habits and behaviors that create that. So do you want to be someone who accumulates a series of words from a language over 30, 60 days, 90 days, and does it 10 minutes a day? Or do you want to be someone who actually learns a language and communicates with others, opens new doors for yourself, and earns more money, has new relationships, for example, right? There's no right or wrong answers here, but it's very, very clear. This is why I said to know where you are and where you want to go. And so having that vision, having that clear understanding, because most people don't sit and think about these things, is going to be paramount for you identifying what habits are going to suit you and then choose them and then therefore stay emotionally involved in them and be committed to them over the long term. So that leads me to identify to the next point, which is identifying what are the actual habits. So we spoke about reverse engineering the process and figuring out what are the habits for me. Now, I would say that being a disciplined, efficient, and productive individual are core to achieving any goal in life, right? So a few habits extremely useful already off the bat regardless of who you are habits of regular exercise, habits of waking up every morning relatively early, depends what time you want to say, because that's arguably when you're at your most productive, and then eating well. I mean, these three are core to, I believe they're the baseline for success. So there's this thing called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And Abraham Maslow was a business consultant, I believe, in the 1950s and 60s. And if you went to university and studied business like I did, you get all this propaganda about Abraham Maslow and how great his stuff was. And actually, Maslow's hierarchy of needs was super interesting. And he said that as human beings, in order to self-actualize, which is the top of Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that, the top of pinnacle of human achievement is self-actualization. And in order to get there, you have to have your baseline needs fulfilled. That is security, food, well-being, and so forth. And so, in my opinion, these habits of regular exercise, for example, and this list is not limited to these, by the way, but regular exercise, eating well, getting up relatively early, productive habits and these disciplined productive habits are really going to be the cornerstone of any successful life that you create. So if you don't already have these kind of cornerstone habits, which are going to be the foundation for any other habits that you want to adopt, such as working towards your new business, writing content, or whatever it is, they're going to propel those habits forward. So I believe if you don't already have those should be the baseline habits that you create and adopt into your life first. And you should prioritize them because they're going to move the needle in such a massive, massive way. And I'm a big believer in the domino effect. So it's much easier to create habits that are going to have a major knock-on effect to everything else in your life rather than trying to add on habits on top of a weak or shaky foundation. It's like the parable of the man who built the house on sand, right? It just shaky foundation, it just sunk, versus the man who built his house on rock and it was a stable foundation. The next point about creating these new habits for yourself and hopefully making them stick is to have a strong why and an unwavering commitment. For example, if part of your new habits are to get out of bed at 5 a.m. every morning, or you're getting out of bed at 5 a.m. every morning because you heard it on a motivational video on YouTube and you like the idea of it, or you're getting up at 5 a.m. every day because that's part of who you are, that's part of your identity, and you know that in order to have the business that you want to have and the life that you want to have and to get the amount of work that you have to get done, perhaps you're already in a 9-to-5 job right now and you want to start your own business. In order to get the most out of the day, that's the time of the day when your energy is at its peak and when you're at your most productive. And therefore, you can put in 2 to 3 hours on your business before you've even gone to work, right? So that's a strong why. Maybe if you go even deeper than that, there's this concept of the 5 whys, right? So why do you want to do it? Because I want to be productive and energetic if I get up in the morning. Well, why do you want to be productive and energetic? Because I know that's when I do my best work. Well, why do you want to do your best work? Because I want to be able to provide for myself and my family. Well, why do you want to provide for yourself and your family? Because I want to be the strongest, best version of myself. Why is it important to be the strongest, best version of yourself? So I can be a capable leader and my kids look up to me, right? And by the way, it's best when someone else asks you these questions because it's easy to fool yourself or just give a very simple answer when you're asking yourself the question. But if you can get someone else to ask you these why questions, it really helps you to tap into that deeper understanding of yourself. And the reason why you want to get that why out of yourself is to harness it and use it as fuel and to anchor it into your psyche. Because again, when that alarm goes off at 5 a.m. in the morning, or when it's time to go to the gym after a long day at work and do leg day, having that why in the back of your mind and knowing it is going to be the difference between you doing it and adopting that habit and doing it when it's difficult and staying the course until it becomes cemented and automatic. So what I mean by that is, in the beginning, you're going to have to persist a little bit. You're going to have to force yourself to do the habit at times when you really don't want to do it. But if you persist for long enough, according to research, it can take anywhere from 60 days plus 60 to 90 days to create a brand new habit. So this is truth, right? All you have to do is to persist for long enough until it becomes automatic, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore. So I think that the trade-off of 6 to 8 weeks to create a brand new habit for a lifetime of freedom is not a bad trade-off at all. So in order to get yourself through that difficult period, having that strong why is so important. And then having an unwavering commitment. So one of my mentors said to me that if you're 95% in, you may as well be 0% in. And what he means by that is that it's very easy to deceive ourselves and lie to ourselves and say that we're all in. And then we start to let excuses get the better of us and say, oh, well, I couldn't do it today. I couldn't wake up at 5 a.m. today. I couldn't go to the gym today because of X, Y, Z, because of the kids, because I was busy at work, da-da-da-da. But think of those times in your life when you've had an unwavering, strong commitment and you just absolutely had to do it and you have no other option. You made it work, right? Whether it was midnight, whether it was 1 a.m, whether it was whatever time of the day, you always find time to do something when it's important to you, right? So if you're getting out of your commitments that you make to yourself, chances are that you haven't made a commitment to yourself and you're not all in. And more often than not, you're likely negotiating with yourself. And so you don't negotiate with terrorists, right? And that voice, that little voice in the back of your head that tells you that you need to stay in bed for longer, that says you're too tired to go to the gym, that says you don't have enough money to invest in yourself, that comes up with all those crappy excuses that you've been listening to for the last few years. That voice is a terrorist because it's stopping you from achieving your goals and going after what you want, so you don't negotiate with it. And so you'll find that the difference between going to where you want to go and adopting these new habits and behaviors likely is just you being more committed and doubling down on your commitment to yourself and saying to yourself, I'm going to keep my word to myself and I'm not going to break my bond to myself. Now, there might be days when you don't actually do the habit, but you've done your best to stick to it and you just didn't do it that day. That's cool. You don't judge yourself for it, right? When you have an unwavering commitment, you're just relentless. Just keep going forward. You don't worry about whether you didn't do something or not because you're just going to keep going and going and going and going and going until it becomes part of you and part of your identity. That's what it takes to adopt new habits that are going to change your life. Because as Aristotle said, excellence is a habit. So everything that you do in your life is a habit. For 96 to 98% of your thinking is unconscious. That means that most of your day is run by programs that you've created. The problem is that most people create their programs unconsciously. They don't give any thought to their programs, habits and behaviors, right? A great example of a program is learning to drive a car. When you first learn to drive a car, you think, okay, here's the gear stick, here's the clutch, or maybe not a clutch in America, but here's the gas pedal, here's the brake, here's the steering wheel. And it's all like you're a fish out of water because you're trying to learn how to operate all these things individually. And then over time, with constant repetition and persistence, and you're persistent because you know that other people can drive a car, therefore you're going to stick to it because you know that you eventually will be able to do it, right? And so eventually with persistence, and it might take you 5 lessons, it might take you 10, it might take you 20, it might take you 30, it might take you 4 or 5 times to pass your driving test, but eventually with enough persistence and sticking at it, it becomes automatic and it becomes a program. And then you learn to drive a car, but your subconscious mind doesn't know what a car is, right? It doesn't know you're learning to drive a car, or all it knows is there's a series of skills that you put together and it forms a habit of driving a car. And so it really isn't any different from creating brand new habits in your life, whether it's waking up, going to the gym, etc., etc. I think there's a misnomer or a misconception in society that people who are successful and do things like go to the gym, wake up early and have effective work habits are extremely disciplined people who use their willpower constantly. Now, I think there is a case for getting yourself to do things when you don't feel like it. I love Mike Tyson's quote of discipline is doing things you hate like you love them, right? And I think there's some truth to that, although I would always encourage you to have a good attitude to any new habit that you adopt. Nevertheless, there's going to be times when you don't feel like doing it. But that being said, this idea that successful people are more disciplined or have more willpower is not the case. Their habit or behavior for long enough until it became automatic, and then they don't have to use discipline and willpower anymore because it's part of their identity. This is why it's so important to have that strong why and that strong commitment to get you over that stage. Because if you adopt a new habit, let's say going to the gym, and starting in January is a classic example, right? People will stick to it for 30 days and then it starts getting tough, and then life gets in the way and all these other things and obligations that you got going on in your life are going to test you and test your commitment and your desire to want to see it through. And then what happens with a lot of people, because they don't have a strong why, don't have a strong commitment, it's like they go to the gym for 4 weeks, then they have another 4 weeks off, then they go for 4 weeks, and then they have another 3 weeks off, and then all of a sudden it becomes a few months, and they never stuck at it for long enough for it to become a habit, and it doesn't take long. All you have to do is stick at it for another month. Just tell yourself, all I'm going to do is just for today. That's it. Just for today, I'm going to stick to this habit. Because if you tell yourself you have to stick to it for a long period, it's going to be like you're going to create a lot of mental pressure for yourself. So the mindset that you want to adopt is, all I have to do is stick at this habit just for today. And if I stick at this habit just for today, for 60 days or a little bit longer, it will become part of my identity and automatic. Really, if you sell yourself on that idea, adopting and create new habits is going to be so much easier for you. Next, about bridging the gap and creating these brand new habits in your life is you want to create an environment that requires no willpower. As human beings, we're looking for the easiest path. And honestly, the easiest path is always the best, because if it's easy for you to do and simple to execute, the likelihood is that you're going to stick to it. The biggest issue that I see is when people adopt new habits is that they make it hard for themselves. It's almost like there's a big badge of honor and say, oh, well, it's really hard. And then the harder it is, the better it's going to be. No, that's not how human psychology works. And that's not how behaviors and habits are formed over time. Certainly not in a way that's sustainable, right? That doesn't mean that you're lazy or anything like this, that people love to make these judgments and labels to simplicity and easiness. But actually, I think it's quite smart, because if you understand how the mind works and how human psychology is, you understand that taking the least path of resistance is the smartest way to adopt new habits. James Clear talks about this in his great book, Atomic Habits. He says that you want to adopt the identity of someone who goes to the gym rather than making it hard on yourself by going to the gym for 60 minutes 5 times a week. If you're not in the habit of going to the gym, then it's going to be very difficult to do that. So if you're not in the habit of going to the gym, he says, just go to the gym for 2 minutes. Just go there. That's all you have to do. You don't even have to work out, because if you go there for long enough, even if it's for just 2 minutes at a time, you're going to have the identity of someone who goes to the gym. And chances are, if you go to the gym, you're going to feel like working out. But if you put so much pressure on yourself that you have to perform, chances are that it's not going to stick and it's going to be unsustainable for you, and you're not going to stick with it for long enough until it becomes a habit. Because here's the thing, if you are the person who goes to the gym for 2 minutes, you can always build on that. But the problem is we let our egos get in the way and we make it so hard for ourselves. A classic example of this is that this 75 hard movement. I'm yet to meet a person who lives that lifestyle and lives it year round and loves living like that. Hey man, I'm all for mental toughness and mental grit. So if you get something out of doing that, power to you. But there's so many people who, it's like, well, our society is enamored with this idea that you have to make things so hard on yourself, otherwise it's not worthwhile. That's, in my experience, that's all ego. Why not work with yourself rather than against yourself? You don't need to fight yourself to create new habits and a new identity. Why not make it easier on yourself? Imagine if it was more effortless, because our society is addicted to this idea of effort and striving and hard and difficult. I mean, mental toughness, important. And I'm all about resilience, and I adopt it in my life every single day. But I'm all for making things as effortless and as easy as they can be when they need to be. When it comes to new habits and behaviors, applying a bit of common sense and not fighting yourself and making things as simple as possible will go a long way. So how do you create a no willpower environment? A great example is for dieting, right? So if you struggle with not eating junk food, then get rid of it out of your house. As simple as that. We're all human, right? And so you're going to be tempted. If there's a box of Pringles in front of you or a box of candy and it's there and it's easy to get, you're going to go for the path of least resistance, and chances are you're going to eat it. I know what I'm like. I'm very disciplined and I eat well, but I know if I have all that crap in my house, then I'm going to eat it. So you've got to create this environment which is low friction and doesn't require you to use your willpower constantly. Because if you're using your willpower constantly throughout the day to form new habits, your willpower is going to be depleted by the end of the day. And it's kind of a finite resource. So if you're using it on trivial, low-level tasks throughout the day, you're using your willpower, which is extremely important to help you create discipline in your life. And you're using it on things like stopping you from eating junk food. That could be willpower that could be allocated as a resource to helping you earn more income, approaching a girl that you find attractive, or whatever it is. You can use that resource meaningfully, or you can use it for crap that you don't need to use it for, right? So if you create a low friction, no willpower environment, whether it comes to eating food, whether it comes to waking up in the morning, whether it comes to any meaningful habit that you want to adopt, this is always the best philosophy, and it's the simplest, most sustainable way to go about it. And then the final thing I want to share here about creating brand new habits, this idea of killing two birds with one stone. Now, I'll be the first to admit that it's not very easy to do this with everything, right? There's only probably a handful of things that you can do this with in your life, and it actually works very well when it comes to exercise, I find. But one thing I found is that if you can pair one habit with another, it works really, really well. So, for example, my study is I have a standing desk, and I do 10,000 steps a day. And I thought, well, how can I make it so much easier for myself to get the steps in and without having to spend all this time outside, but also get work done at the same time? So it was an interesting proposition. And I had these constraints of, well, I wanted to do some work, I want to be productive, but I also want to get more steps in. So I came up with the idea of getting a desk treadmill. So this is like a small treadmill that you can take out from under your desk and you can put it away when you finish with it. And so in the morning, I study for 1 hour every day. So I either read a book or watch a video on personal development, goal setting, or something like that, right? And so I thought, well, I'm already spending that time, so why don't I use that time productively? So I get on the treadmill while I'm watching videos and studying, and I get around 30 to 40 minutes of walking, which equates to around 3,000 to 5,000 steps. So I've already done that before I started my day, right? And so you could do the same if you wanted to get more steps. And by the way, if you want to incorporate a great habit which is going to transform your life, improve your physique, and improve your health, then 10,000 steps a day is an absolute no-brainer. And there's lots of research to demonstrate that 10,000 steps a day is fantastic for your longevity and overall health. So another example could be if you take lots of meetings in a day, meetings where you're sat down all the time. This is kind of a wasted time. It's like dead time, in my opinion. Why not take those meetings standing up, walking on a regular basis, right? So if you think about where in the day can you do more things? So are you like allocating time for meetings when you could be allocating time for doing a meeting, like you're listening in on something, you don't have to, and then you could be walking around. So I want you to think about where can you kill two birds with one stone if you're adopting habits. And then the corollary to that is James Clear's concept of habit stacking, right? So habit stacking is this idea of adding a habit on top of an existing habit that you already do on a regular basis. And I found this extremely effective and so easy to incorporate new habits that it's kind of crazy. I think, why is everyone else not doing it? It's because they don't know about it, right? So habit stacking, an example is, let's say that you already do things in the morning like brush your teeth and you already have a shower and you get dressed, right? And hopefully you don't leave the house naked. So you're already doing these things pretty much as a given. So if you want to adopt a new habit, it's going to be so much easier to adopt a new habit if you add it on to an existing habit. And I found this is a pretty foolproof and effortless way to add on a new habit. I added on meditation after brushing my teeth in the morning. I already do my morning study and morning affirmations. So I've added other things on top of that, the morning study and affirmations, to make my morning routine even more powerful, more effective, and more productive. So I'm already spending that hour. So another 5 minutes here or another couple of minutes there won't make a big difference, right? So again, the only caveat here is that if you want to add in a new habit on top of an existing one, in my experience, the simple one makes it much more effective. So if you want to incorporate meditation and you're already brushing your teeth in the morning or you're already doing a hot shower, adding on a 1-minute meditation in the morning is such a simple, no-brainer way to start a new habit, and your mind can't come up with excuses for it. So again, you're using your psychology for yourself, because then you call yourself out in your own BS if you tell yourself you don't have time to do 1 minute meditation or a 1-minute affirmation or something like that. So in summary, if you want to create brand new habits this year and beyond, if you only take a few of these concepts that I've spoken about here, but if you want to really supercharge your year and you apply all of these concepts that I've shared with you here, you're going to create some brand new habits that are going to transform your income, your relationships, and most importantly, your self-esteem. Because I tell you what, when you start creating habits and behaviors that are taking you towards where you want to go, as opposed to taking you to where you don't want to be, for example, scrolling, watching Netflix, and so forth, you feel so much better about yourself because you keep your word to yourself. You do the things that you say you're going to do. And it really just changes your whole demeanor and your whole energy. And really the quality of your life goes like that.